Good afternoon, everybody. Equipment, masterclass, and clinical conversion endgames. The guideline outlines a suffocation method, a disciplined approach to endgame play that allows you to consistently outmaneuver Stockfish and convert winning advantages and checkmate in record time. The core philosophy: Geometrical Suffocation. To convert an endgame in 15 to 30 moves, you stop playing the opponent and start playing the board geometry. Obviously, most simple thing, the box principle. You use major pieces like queens, rook, queen, rook to cut off the board to a smaller and smaller rectangles. The king has a 3x3 box, and he stays there until your king arrives. The L-shaped shadow places your queen, until your king arrives. The L-shaped shadow places your queen and knight moves away from the enemy kings. This shadows him and takes away most of his important squares without allowing a stalemate or giving him room to breathe. Strategic milestones for quick conversion. This is the first game that is I would say a potentially complicated, or if you do not know to convert with winning materials, like draw this sort of endgame. If you do not know how to convert an advantage, I immediately put the king already in check by freaking d5, queen to d5, doctors from king to g3. I went king to e4, queen to e4, Stockfish in f2. I immediately go queen to h1 to cut off this square. The king tries to invade. I just get direct opposition. Eventually by force, I force them to force this pawn away. Alright, because even if the queen promotes, it's checkmate. Now, let's get past the line that Stockfish was calculated. f2, queen to h1, g3, f5. My king goes to f5. He goes queen to h3. I immediately go king to f4, h4, and then queen to h2. The same exact process, just in a different format. Look at the right triangle right here. Queen guards all these squares, king guards these squares. It makes a big white triangle for the black kings not to escape. Strategic milestones for quick conversion. Eliminate the counterplay. Immediately 1 through 5 is to trade. Your priority should be to trade off your opponent's last active piece. Even for now, my last opponent's active piece was what? And this wasn't a trade, but a forced removal. By removing the pawn. Now also too, let's go to the second game, which is a decently complicated rook game that took about 23 moves for me to win against Stockfish. Immediately black goes, I was white, Stockfish was black. Immediately king to c6. I go king to d2, attacking the rook. Rook to a3, king to c2, king to b5, king to frickin' king to b2, cutting off the square, forcing this rook to move. Goes rook to a4. I go king to b3, rook to a1, rook to g5 check, king to c6, frickin' b5 check, king to d6. I push a6, rook to b1, step out the way, protect the pawn, keep a sort of like fortress. You seen this? My whole objective is to get this rook on the file. Now this goes rook to c1 check. I go king to b4. Same thing, rook to b1, a5, rook to a1. Now this maneuver was just I don't know what to call this. I like to call it, I don't know what to call this. I do this a lot where I like to, if my king's on a dark square and my pawns are on the light squares, I like to cut through the diagonal between both of these pawns to get here, right? And to stop the opposition on the king, to protect all these pawns, and this rook can invade without being able to be captured. And once the rook goes here, eventually, I immediately continue to escort and guide the pawn. I immediately freaking force a trade of the final final piece. Even though I promote to a queen, I purposely put the king on b7 to capture the rook. King that captures a8 rook. And then it's king to c7. I go rook to g6. Stockfish goes king d7. I continue to push the pawn. He's just one move away from trying to get my knight, my rook. I bring my rook away, basically cutting off this file completely, having this pawn readily promote. King to e7, queen to b8. Now I simply go queen to b7, then rook to c8 checkmate. By me forcing this trade over here with Stockfish, and even though I lost my pawn, I forced for black to take. And this is a converting endgame now. My king was very active. I never left my king in the center or on the background. I was using it as a soldier and a guiding piece, and basically just basically if my white king was active, this game would have been way less of a winning percentage. Key takeaways for each level: beginners, don't check the king, trap the king. A move that takes away 3 squares is better than a check that gives the king 3 new squares. For intermediate players, transition into a known win if you are a piece up and a pawn. Trade the piece for the last defender. It's easier to win a pawn endgame than a piece endgame. Advance. Focus on parapaleptics. Anticipate the engine's Desperado moves like rook to a1 blunder. That even I believe in the next game. I show you it will show. And position your pieces so the last-ditch efforts don't lead that their last-ditch efforts lead directly into a forced mate and not stalemate. This is the 3rd game I played against Stockfish, and this was a pretty complicated one. I wasn't able to get the full-blown marathon 50-move game that I had before, but I was able to get a similar game in the same exact condition. There's rook to a1 Desperado move right here. Immediately, I obviously understand that my king's going to be under fire, and Stockfish is going to hit me with a discovered check. So, I have a 7.1 advantage. How do I convert this to way more? Obviously, he moves his king to b3, the discovered check. I get direct opposition to king, king to b7. Immediately, Stockfish goes rook to d1. I go queen to e2 to cut off the king and the rook from coordinating, but also forcing the rook to get moved and isolate itself, which it's smart enough to move close enough away to where my objective right now is to basically stop the king and the rook from becoming best friends and sitting next to each other, because if these guys become best friends, I'm eventually that's my bad. I didn't mean to do that. I go queen to e2. Freaking goes king to b3, e6, king to c2, queen to e3, queen to d1, and I simply just do this simple pattern of check, check, and then I slowly, as I literally force Stockfish to just move its king, literally just look at this pattern. Rook e1 attacks my queen, move my queen over check. King moves over to g1, king to d4. Stockfish goes rook to e8, the Desperado move. I immediately go queen to g4 to check at the intermediate move. Same exact thing, queen to f5 check, in the between move. King to e1, I immediately gain direct opposition. Now freaking rook to d8 check on my king. I immediately go king to e3. Rook to e8, rook to e8 check. My king goes to f3. Queen king to d2. I immediately finally get the opportunity and chance to force a fork between the king and the rook. Alright, king to c3, I take the rook. Then queen to b4, making the box. I put my queen on the 2nd rank farther away. The king tries to walk itself into a corner. I hit a sort of zigzag maneuver, putting my king on this square and knowing that it will be shoved into the corner, so now it's an automatic a1. To even bring this over, converting endgame advantages require discipline and precision. I hope this video helps you. There will be one more final game to bring up that I played against maxed up Stockfish. I took about 78. They have 78 moves for me to lose. Let's transition. Let's go. 78 moves for Stockfish. The ultimate fatigue test. Those games are won The first 20 moves. But master titles are Lash. Watch me out, last Stockfish, Max Engine, 78, Rook Endgame, Marathon. This is SDCFORGED. Define. Let's see. Let's go to let's start immediately. I'm going to go with a King Pawn opening. Stockfish round to D5. Knight F3, Knight C6. Decided to be really open as a Spanish game. He developed his knight. Immediately Knight to F6. I immediately go for Bishop takes E6, forcing double pawns, forcing the Berlin defense, which is a strong term of a technical endgame. Immediately go ahead to C3, Bishop D6, H3, stopping this, H6, up again B4, Bishop to B4, Knight E5, Knight takes pawn E5, Knight takes E4 pawn, castles, Knight takes Knight, double pawns, Bishop to the Knight, no, Bishop to D6, Bishop to F4, castles, Rook to E1, Bishop to F5. Now let's start. I get the move 15. I lose a slight edge. Knight takes F4. The just goes immediately. Queen to D6. I go G4. Why is this? To immediately force the trade of if Queen takes Knight. Force this sequence right here. And force a 7th rank invasion with Stockfish counters. Immediately Stockfish counters accordingly. I go Queen to D3, forcing a queen trade. Stockfish takes. I take back. Some pawn takes D3. Takes the queen. I immediately go Rook to E6. Pawn to C5. I immediately take a pawn away and force double pawns. But Stockfish doesn't respond to that. Stockfish goes king to F7, Rook to E3, king to F8 to D8, D4, Bishop, pawn takes C5, D-pawn takes C5, Rook B8, stack the double rook on the E file, Rook E1, Rook E8, exchange one pair of rooks, avoid a counter trade and exchanging all the rooks. Why? Because look at the king's counting up the squares. I would have to take one. So go over this section really importantly, right? If I trade off this rook, let's say, right? It's this. Stockfish takes, I go out, Stockfish goes in, and it's just a race to the center of the board, and Stockfish has the advantage. So, and look at the pawn majority, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, Stockfish is going to win this pawn game, so that's why I didn't exchange rooks. And as he goes, let's go back, Rook to D1, King to E7, trying to see if I'll take the final rook to force king and pawn endgame. With this type of pawn structure, absolutely not. I can find that immediately. Rook to B8, Rook to G4. So defends all the pawn accordingly. Check the king. King to F7. Even for me, when we go back to move 18, putting the rook on the 7th rank was a very strong move. It was the highway to victory and rook endgames. I landing my rook on E7. I paralyzed black's queen side pawns, B6 and the B6 pawn and C7 pawn. Even through now, let's go back to 19 to 25. I was winning this game, and eventually I lose. 19. With me doing the queen trade, it gives me a structural advantage of these 3 pawns guarding all these 3 squares. I transferred the game into a battle where I had the court better rook, while black's rook was stuck defending the C8 and B6 pawn. Both of these pawns had to be guarded. I had the rook to openly attack both of these pawns. Black had to defend them and stop my rook from taking these 2 pawns. If not, he would have lost. The king activation around move 28. If we go to 28 and going to move 29. Stockfish slowly tries the march to king. As I do the best of my ability humanly possible to stop the king from getting to the center. Even in the middle game that we call this, Stockfish is going to convert this 1.2 negative advantage into an absolute, unfortunately, rook and king checkmate endgame. Wow, my king is in H1. I won this game because I forced the nature of the position to change. I didn't wait for a mistake. I created an imbalance with obviously move 16, G4. If we go back. Even though I technically lost, I forced an exchange against Stockfish. Very, very hard to do. It's the most powerful computer engine in the world. Now, let's go back. I don't wait for the end game, I forced it. That's the only sliver of hope and chance that I had. Now, to even continue the rest of this game, it's simply just a Stockfish slowly improving its position. I do the best I possibly can. And even me, I wanted to try to do 3-move repetition, but he avoided it. And I continued to try and do a freaking look at the end, the rest of this game. And pawn, put the rook on G file, move my king into the center of the board, king, and freaking pawn. Stockfish has to play perfect to eventually beat me. Go through. This is just me saying, in this position where I was at, I honestly gave up. I was like, I know there's no way possible I can win this, so I just sacrificed the rook to take off the final pawn. The king gets out of position and checkmated. The call to action. Are you ready to stop being intimidated by stronger players or even engine like levels like this? Most players fold in the moment when they face a higher rated opponent, but with the right technical foundation, you can turn any game into a marathon that you aren't prepared for. My 78 move stand against maximum Stockfish cruisers at SDCFORGED students don't just play. We endure. We forge the kind of technique that makes even the best engine work for every single inch. Direct message me message me forward on Instagram or on TikTok, or hit the link in my bio. Let's start making this end game, forging it, resilience today. Forge your game, enjoy. This to even make a final annotation. This 78 move, not victory, but technical loss over a massive advantage is more than just a win. It's a proof of concept for me. This system, converting a long-haul game against an engine, an entity that never gets tired, never blinks, never feels pressure, is a feat that most club players will never achieve in their entire lives. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Even up to the 15th move, the entire position is dead even. You guys have a good rest of your day, and learn something new.